Hello, hello, hello. Imagine a single structure standing between a major American city and a catastrophic loss of its entire drinking water supply. Now imagine someone trying to blow it up from underwater. Welcome back to Breaking the System. I'm your host, and on this show, we examine the systems that keep society running, trace how they evolved, and question what happens when they're tested. On May 13th, so 2 days ago, one of those systems faced an unprecedented test. Deep beneath the surface of Big Creek Lake, also known as the J.B. Conserve Reservoir in Alabama, divers on a routine maintenance made a discovery that stopped everything. A grenade-style improvised explosive device, or what they call an IED, was attached to the dam. And today we're breaking down the Big Creek Breach, the history of this vital infrastructure, and the long-running battle over public access versus protection. The details of the threat and what it might mean for critical systems nationwide. We present the facts and the competing perspectives, and you decide with critical thinking. Be back right after this.
The curtains rise, the lights burn bright. You're blinded now, can't see the fight. Smoke and mirrors, they lead the way. Fooling hearts night after day. Welcome to the show, it's all pretend. The smiles, the lies, the perfect end.
All right. So to grasp why this incident sent shockwaves through mobile, you first need to understand the geography of dependence. So this reservoir was completed in 1952 by damming Big Creek and other tributaries. It's an earthen dam roughly a mile long and about 75 feet high, holding around 17 billion gallons of water across roughly 3,600 acres. And it serves as the sole source of drinking water for the mobile area, supplying approximately 60 million gallons per day to homes and hospitals and businesses and the surrounding communities, supporting hundreds of thousands of people. And for over 7 decades, the reservoir has been the backbone of the region's water system. And the mobile water area water and sewer systems, or MAWSS, well, they manage it, including a significant buffer zone around the lake to safeguard water quality. That's important, right? That's where we're getting our water from. Got to make sure that the water is quality water. And what was once a more open recreational area has become a tightly controlled resource. Supporters of tighter management argue that this is necessary for public health. Critics see it as overreach, and both views have deep roots in the lake's history. Kind of sucks that we're kind of getting to that age where people want to damage these things that we've built and that we use, and that that it's kind of the backbone of communities, just to do it, right? It's pretty sad. So then we have to put these laws or enforce these things, and it takes away a lot of freedoms. It takes away a lot of fun, right, for this community. So let's talk about the access wars. Big Creek Lake wasn't always so restricted, and for much of its existence, locals used it for things like fishing and boating and community recreation. And over time, concerns grew about threats to the water quality. In recent years, MAWSS pointed to invasive species such as giant salvinia and the potential arrival of zebra mussels as major risks. And these organisms can clog infrastructure and degrade water systems over time. In an early 2025, They closed the public access, citing the need to protect the sole source drinking water supply. And this sparked significant local pushback, with residents arguing it limited long-standing community use and felt like a loss of public space. Well, I mean, that's huge, right? Think about all of the maybe tourism that comes into this place and the money that this lake would make off of these people coming in and boating and having a recreational place for, maybe there was a beach, maybe they could play volleyball and they fished, and all of these things that now the community loses out on because that's the only place that they get their water from. That's pretty sad. So legal and political battles followed, and the MAWSS sought clearer authority over the reservoir. The Alabama Department of Conservation and Natural Resources maintained that it qualified as a navigable public waterway, and after months of disputes, on April 21st of this year, just weeks before the IED was discovered, a settlement was reached. The state leased the lakebed and surface waters for the MAWSS for 100 years. Public access was partially restored under regulatory conditions such as bank fishing, rentals, and limited personal kayaks. But the MAWSS holding primary control to set rules aimed at preventing contamination. So they don't want basically boats with motors and things like that, because that can contaminate the water that people drink and that they use. And it makes sense, right? Supporters of the deal emphasized water security for the region's population, and opponents, including some local lawmakers and fishermen, argued it concentrated too much power in one entity and restricted traditional rights. The core legal question of whether the lake is a fully public waterway remains unresolved in the settlement. I mean, if they're allowing people to fish, and if you can use a kayak or a canoe, something without a boat, without a motor, right? You still have access to that waterway. You just can't go in your fancy $100,000 boat, which, I don't know. Like, I'm still fine with that. I think I'm fine with that. I'm not a huge fisherman. Like, I don't like to fish. But as long as I still have access to that waterway to maybe throw a boat in the water and enjoy the water, and people can fish on the shore and on the dam and from their non-motorized boats. I mean, they still have access to it. I would be perfectly fine with that. I think that's a good give and take, considering that this lake was primarily used or is set up for drinking water, right? And so let's talk about the discovery, the big bombshell, so to speak. So on May 13th, 2 days ago, contract divers were performing routine underwater maintenance on the dam structures, standard checks for wear and tear on critical infrastructure, which they have to do on all dams. They're supposed to, right? So instead of finding routine issues, they located a grenade-style IED positioned at a pressure point on the dam, and the site was immediately secured. A multi-agency team, including the FBI, the ALEA, the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency, Mobile County Sheriff's Office, Mobile Police, and the Gulf Coast Regional Maritime Response and Render Safe Team. That's a hell of a word to say, right? Well, they all responded, and the device was safely retrieved and detonated in a controlled manner off-site. No injuries, no damage to the dam, and no contamination to the water supply were reported. All good, but it leaves us to know that this thing was live, and it could have went off at any time. Could have damaged the lake. It could have destroyed the lake. It could have destroyed all of this property. It could have killed people. Like this is a serious thing, right? We have to take this serious, okay? And so the MAWSS director, Bud McRory, described it as an unprecedented threat to the region's drinking water infrastructure. Federal and local authorities are now investigating, and as of now, there's no suspects that have been publicly identified. I'm sure they've got people that they're thinking of or that they've watched, right? Maybe they picked up on a camera nearby or whatever, a Ring doorbell somewhere. Like, they have access to all that stuff now. And the incident has prompted discussions about heightened security for similar facilities, right? And so similar facilities, because this, like we said, this serves roughly 60 million gallons per day to this area. And that's a lot of people that are using this particular water. And so similar facilities, we have to look at other dams and whatever else, anything within the grid system, whether if it's power, internet, water, gas, all of these things that we use and that we, the people, take for granted, that we can just turn the spigot on or turn the stove on or turn whatever on, and all of those amenities come out because we pay for it, right? We expect those to be in top-notch working condition 24/7, 365, okay? So this type of stuff we absolutely have to take serious, of the utmost certainty, like especially when there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives that are involved in this or that could be involved in this. And so let's look at the broader questions here, the system's response. Events like this naturally raise questions about things like timing, motives, and consequences. And a device appears shortly after a high-profile settlement, granting long-term control of the management authority. Like the timing is almost too perfect, right? And so was this the work of a lone actor opposed to the restrictions? Maybe something part of a larger threat, or something else bigger entirely. Like, we have to think of all of those things, right? When we're talking about infrastructure within the United States that Americans use, okay? And so in response, officials have signaled increased surveillance and security measures around the reservoir, which makes sense, they should. And the system here, meaning the interconnected web of utilities, law enforcement, and regulatory bodies, has moved quickly to fortify this area. And proponents say this is prudent given the critical nature of the asset, and skeptics wonder whether the incident will accelerate further restrictions on public access or shift more power towards centralized management. And history shows that threats to infrastructure often lead to tighter controls. So keep that in mind. The system knows this. Okay, they know that this is the outcome. And whether those controls effectively balance safety with openness is a reoccurring tension in many systems that we've examined across this show. And so another question that we really have to sit back and ask is, who's the perpetrator? Could the perpetrator be on the part of the recreationist, the person that is against the system, that's seen this as a grip for more control away from people being able to boat and to fish and to use the water as they please? And that makes sense. But then there's a deeper question that we have to ask. And could it be somebody within the system itself wanting it to look like that was the perpetrator? In knowing, because history shows, like we said, history shows that once a threat to an infrastructure happens, it often leads to tighter control. Well, if the system wants more control, what better way to get that than to make it happen yourself? Someone from the inside. They plan it, and they're like, oh, well, we know that there's going to be some safety tests coming up. Let's plant this, they'll find it, and then we'll get full control of all the water access rights, and we'll just keep the public away from it 100%. History shows that that's true, and so we naturally have to ask, could that be a viable question, a viable output from this, right? We can't leave no stone unturned, so to speak, right? And thinking of the people that we've talked about in the past, the millionaires and the billionaires and the elites, and they just want control. Like, that's not very far-fetched. So either one of those scenarios could play out. But the bigger question is, why are we letting this happen? Like our infrastructure needs to be, like we said, it needs to be top-notch, because there's hundreds of thousands or millions of people, or sometimes billions of people that rely on these systems day in and day out. And for you as an individual, as a company, as a corporation, like, you have to be pretty damn evil to destroy or try to kill or try to blame somebody else for your own actions in just wanting more control or just wanting more money. But that's how these systems work. It's how all of these systems have worked. That's what we've talked about time and time and time again. So what makes this one different? It doesn't, right? It doesn't. It makes it no different whatsoever, whether if it's happening in a little town like Effingham, Illinois, or if it's happening to a big town, to a big city like Chicago, Illinois, or New York City, or LA, or wherever, right? And so it really is this balancing act of how much power do we give these people in making sure that our water is safe, and that our land is safe, and that our gas is safe, and that our electricity turns on, and us, the civilians, the society, being able to use those things whenever we deem fit to use those, right? Because those are our lands. That's ours as Americans, right? We give up those rights to let these people furnish those things for us, okay? So we have to keep an open mind to all of this stuff. We have to think about this. So the water in the mobile area remains safe at this time, and the dam is still intact, but this event has drawn new attention to how we protect and who actually controls essential public systems like our water supplies. And from its construction in the early 1950s as a straightforward reservoir to today's layered debates over security and access and authority, the story of Big Creek Lake reflects something that's broader challenges, right? And so how do we safeguard what everyone depends on without alienating the very public that it serves, right? And so we'll continue following the investigation as we always do. We look at everything that's happening in the news and everything that's happening within history. And if new details emerge, we might post that on here. Here is our critical thinking question. In a world of increasing threats to critical infrastructure, where should the line be drawn between necessary protection of these vital public resources like drinking water and preserving traditional public access and oversight? Right? That's a good one. Okay? Because we want safe drinking water, just like we want safe and effective electricity, and we want safe gas. But where's the oversight, and does the public have any say in that oversight? Okay? And the second question here is, what safeguards would you as the person, as the public, as the civilian want in place to ensure that those protections don't become permanent exclusions from the public, right? Because if we permanently exclude ourselves, we fully give that up, and we no longer are a part of that system at all, other than we just are reliant on it and we use it. So those are our two critical thinking questions that we're going to end with tonight. So if you found this story interesting, if you liked it, like, subscribe, share, comment. I love reading comments. I try to comment to everything. So I'm your host. Thanks for joining Breaking the System with me. Keep questioning the system. Keep questioning everything around you. We'll see you guys next time. God bless. Have a good day.